Charlie Sheen called my house once. He was looking for my friend Adam Rifkin, who's a filmmaker who was working on a project with Charlie at the time, and a friend of mine from college. I wasn't there, so he got the machine, and he left a message that sounded basically exactly this. It was, "Hey, this is Charlie Sheen. I'm looking for Adam Rifkin. If you see him, can you have him give me a call at home? Okay, bye." And I looked at the machine and I thought, I've got Charlie Sheen's voice on my answering machine. And this was pre-Tiger Blood, post-Platoon Charlie Sheen. So he was not yet his own punchline, but he was a really big star. And I was like, there's got to be something funny I can do with this, which has become a mantra for me in all endeavors. There's got to be something funny I can do with this, and there was. I had the best time of my life that afternoon calling all of my friends from college who knew Adam Rifkin, but hadn't seen him in like 2 or 3 years, had sort of lost contact with Adam Rifkin, and I called their answering machines, and I left my message from Charlie Sheen on their answering machine with no explanation. There was no caller ID, so nobody could tell where it had come from. I didn't get any calls that day, but this gift kept on giving for months, for 6 months, for a year and a half later. I would be at a party and somebody would come up to me and say, "Hey Dan, you're still in touch with Adam Rifkin, right?" And I'd say yes, and they just, the weirdest, like a year ago, Charlie Sheen called my house looking for Adam Rifkin. I haven't seen Adam in like 2 years. And how the hell does Charlie Sheen have my number anyway? Now that's good fun. That's good fun. And that made me think that, there's this equation that comedians use a lot of times, that tragedy plus time equals comedy. When enough time has passed, you can make a joke about the Titanic or Lincoln getting shot. But I think there's also an equation that goes, comedy plus time equals more comedy. And there is a direct relationship between the time in that equation and the comedy. The longer you can delay the punchline once you've set it up, the longer you can delay that satisfaction of having that pay off, the funnier it is. In the early 90s, I was working on a show called Rocko's Modern Life on Nickelodeon. And, oh, thank you. And it was I was working with my buddy Swampy Marsh, who I later went on to create Phineas and Ferb with. And we had a cleanup artist that we shared this big triangular office with. His name was Perry, and he was this big, brash guy from the East Coast. He was a former rock drummer with a voice full of gravel. He sounded like this, and he had this big mane of curly red hair. And he shared our office, but because Swampy and I were the senior artists in the room, we got to decide what music we listened to on a regular basis when we were cleaning up storyboards. And we had, we would work his tapes in as well, but I had a tape of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the entire movie. I had set up my VCR straight into my cassette player, and I had recorded on a 120-minute cassette. You guys remember cassettes? Am I dating myself for this? I recorded the entire movie, the dialogue, the sound effects, the music, everything. And we would listen to it as a radio play while we were cleaning up the storyboards. And Perry made the mistake of complaining about that at one point. And so it went from like every 3 or 4 days we would put it in to basically every day. Anything we could do to really irritate Perry was always fun. And I would just put it in the middle of the day, and he'd go, "Oh no, not this again!" And pretty soon we'd all be doing the time warp again. And so on a Sunday, I came in. I was working on a particularly elaborate scene, and I wanted to work on some of the animation on it. And I came in to a deserted studio so that I wouldn't be disturbed. And I put in the Rocky Horror tape while I was drawing, and Brad and Janet were singing about their wedding plans. And suddenly, Perry's voice comes on the tape. "This sucks, man. This fucking sucks." He comes back off. And I think this is wonderful. This is absolutely wonderful because he does not know that I have heard this. And I called Swampy at home and I told him what I was doing, and I took that tape home and I taped over that entire side because I knew exactly where it started and exactly where it ended, and I still had my VCR hooked up to my tape player. And I taped over the entire side, restoring it to its pre-prank condition, because he must have come in on Sunday and recorded this. Or he must have come in on Saturday. I'm there on Sunday. He came in and recorded this thinking that on Monday, we're gonna play it, of course, and he's going to hear his little message to us, and we'll be like, why'd you do that? I don't know what he thought would happen, but he's looking forward to this. I know he's looking forward to this. So I take it home, I restore it to its pristine condition, I bring it back into work, and that day, about midway through the day, I pop it in, and we're drawing, and Perry's over at his desk, and I can see him out of the corner of my eye, and he's sitting there, and he's drawing, and he's like... He's not quite giggling, but he is just holding it in. And I'm just drawing and sort of pretending to ignore him and just noticing what he's doing. And then the time comes where his voice was on the tape. And he goes... He gets up and he walks over and he looks at my tape player. He comes back and he sits down. He's no longer drawing. He's just sort of like looking back, and he comes over and he goes, "Hey, Dan, is that the same tape that you guys always listen to?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, Perry, we listen to it almost every day." He's like, "No, but is it the same one? Do you have more than one, or do you just have that one?" I was like, "Oh, I just have the one. If you want one, I can make a dub for you. Just bring me a blank tape." He said, "No. And he goes and he sits back down, and now the time warp is playing, which is like 5 minutes past where he put his message, and he just like throws his arms up in the air and goes, "Oh, man, I don't know what happened." And he spills the whole thing. He said, "I came in here on Sunday, and I recorded a message on the tape for you guys, and I don't know what happened." Like, "On this tape?" Yeah. "Well, maybe we missed it. Maybe it was, no, it was really loud. You would have heard it." It was like, "Well, maybe it's after this." It's like, no, it was like," and Swampy's like, "You got to press record and play, Mr. Sound Engineer." And he's like, no, I played it back. I was like, "Okay, well, then it's obviously here. Let's rewind it." So I rewound it back to the beginning, and we listened all the way through. At the end of which I said, "Do you want to hear it again?" Because and he's like, "No, I don't know what happened." He was just muttering to himself the whole rest of the day. And it would have ended there, except what he didn't know is that on that Sunday, not only did I take that tape home, but I went over to Perry's desk, and he's got a stack of tapes there that he likes, and about 4 tapes down is the Steely Dan tape. And I slide it out, and this is a tape that's one of his favorite albums, but it's out of his rotation. He's not been listening to it a lot recently. We used to listen to it a lot, and now we don't. At some point, he's going to listen to this tape again. And I take it over and I tape over the tab holes so that it'll record. And I put it in my tape recorder and find a space just big enough between the first 2 songs to go, "This sucks, man. This fucking sucks." I take it out. I take the tape off of the tab holes. 4 tapes down. I slide it back in. And I wait. I wait 2.5 years. A quarter of a decade I wait. And I'm at home on a Saturday, and I just get a phone call. Like, the show has ended. I haven't worked with Perry or even seen him in the last year. And I get a phone call on a Saturday morning. I'm just sitting at home, and bring. I say, "Hello?" He's, "Oh, you fucking got me, man. You so fucking got me." "Well, hello, Perry. You've been listening to Steely Dan, have you?" "You fucking got me." He had been in his car, and he'd put the tape in, and between those first 2 songs, when my voice came on, "This sucks, man. This fucking sucks," he had this Dory moment from Finding Nemo, where his memory just went all the way back. All the way back to that weekend, and he sort of had this Kaiser Soze realization of what I had done because I had gotten him twice. I'd gotten him that day, but I had also gotten him back then by not allowing him the satisfaction of knowing he had gotten us. So he saw it. It just completely broke his brain. It made him just absolutely crazy. And an interesting footnote to that story, later he did actually go crazy, and he killed his stepfather and led the police on a wild televised chase to the corner of Vineland and Ventura, barricaded himself in a 76 station, and shot himself. But it wasn't later that same day. It was much later. It was like, okay, maybe that whole tragedy plus time equals comedy, I don't have that figured out yet. I'm going to back away from that. I'm going to go back to the comedy plus time equals more comedy. That I've got figured out. So, and that equation works even if the time in question is infinity. If it's tragedy plus infinity or comedy plus infinity, still makes more comedy. And I'll tell you this story. I lived in a house right after college that looked like Pee-wee's Playhouse had exploded in it. I had this huge collection of toys, and they were everywhere. A lot of people collect toys and keep them in the box so that they're pristine. Fuck that. I take them out and I put them on the mantelpiece and stuff. And I had everything. I had every manner of pop culture figurine. I had a giant inflatable California raisin from those commercials. I had the Imperial Walker from Star Wars. I had a little George Burns action figure that I got at Toys R Us. It looked exactly like George Burns, but he was shrunk down to this size. I don't even know what the target consumer is for a George Burns action figure, but apparently I fit into that narrow demographic. I had a talking Pee Wee Herman doll. I had the masturbating Tarzan doll from Disney. Do you remember this? Tarzan, the movie came out, and they had a doll that had spear throwing action. It was like a action figure. The problem was when it was resting in the box on the shelves, his arms were in this position. And so when kids came, actually followed the directions on the box, and it said "Try me" for spear throwing, they would press the button and they would get this. And it made the news. Somebody complained it was really inappropriate. It made the news. Disney pulled them from the shelves, but not before I went and bought one and put it on my shelf right next to Pee Wee Herman, which, in retrospect, was sort of a match set. There was sort of a theme going on there. I had all this stuff, and during that time, I went to a bachelor party at a friend of mine's bachelor party, and we had a private room in this restaurant and a big long table, and everybody was at the table, and in the center of the table was a gigantic latex sculpture of a big penis and balls, like 2 feet tall and with sparklers coming out of it, which was a nice little conversation piece around the table. And there was a big conversation at the end of the night about what we should do with this quite impressive latex sculpture. And the basic consensus was that I should take it home because I was the only person who had a house in which it would not look out of place. I mean, I already had this huge menagerie of toys, of ridiculous toys all over the place. Who's going to notice a 24-inch penis? Turns out, everyone does. Just FYI, they're going to notice, and the penis became legend, and eventually, every single birthday and every single Christmas, I would get presents. I would get gag gifts, and they would be just like there'd always be 3 or 4 sex toys in the gag gifts, and I got vibrating dildos and fake penises of every size, shape, and color, and varying levels of realism, which I found there were some that were actually cast apparently from famous porn stars' junk. And then it went from that and then all the way over to some that looked like Julie Taymor had made them. They were just sort of like vague representations of a penis. But at a point I felt like my house should be rezoned as a sex shop because I've got just way too many sex toys for one house. And they were all amongst the toys, and they sort of just all became wallpaper at a certain point. And eventually I grew up. And it was very sad. It was sad. Just coincidentally, about the time I wanted a girl to move in with me, I cleaned all the toys off the shelves and put them all in boxes, and they're just like all the toys. I made it look like an adult lived in this house, and it was just like you come in and it was just a living room, and instead of this weird, crazy, drugged out hallucination, and I lived in that house for 8 more years until I met my wife Clarissa. And we bought a house together, and I moved out. And it took like a week to get all of these college droppings I had out of the house. I threw away whole huge trash cans full of stuff, and I cleaned out the whole house, and I was just doing one last trip through, looking in all the corners to make sure I got everything. And I'm walking out, and my wife is standing in the hallway. Clarissa's standing in the hallway looking up. And I say, honey? And she goes, Dan, you've got an attic here. Is there anything up there? I was like, I'd lived in the house for 12 years now at this point. I remembered at some point having been up in the attic, but I do not know. I will go check. And I got a ladder, and I climbed up into the attic, and there was some great things up there. There were a bunch of boxes. There was like old T-shirts with cartoon characters I had drawn on them. There was photo albums and sketch pads, and then there was this one big box, and it was like a big box too. It was like the kind of box you get at a box store, and it was filled entirely with sex toys. Like, it was this tall, and and this wide, and it was all sex toys. And the enormous, centerpiece was there, and I just looked at it, and I thought, what am I going to do with this? I didn't want to take it with me to the new house. That seemed a little bit strange. But at the same time, throwing them away, that was like, just the thought of all those penises lying abandoned in the bottom of a trash can was really too weirdly sad. I couldn't even put my finger on what was sad about it, but it just made me cross my legs. And I said, well, but there's got to be something great, something funny I can do with this. And there was, and I realized what the perfect thing to do was. I closed the box up, and I backed away from it. And I moved to a new house. Because this is a rental, and there's going to be a bunch of different people living in this house, and someday someone is going to go up into that attic, and they're going to see that one box sitting right in the middle of the attic, and their curiosity is going to get the better of them, and then they will have a story they can tell at parties too. And this is a joke that I will never get the satisfaction of seeing it pay off. This is an infinity joke, but I do have this infinitesimal fantasy, this infinitesimal hope that someday I will be at a party, and out of the corner of my ear, I will hear somebody saying, and then we went up into the attic, and there was this box up there with like 40 fake penises in it. What is that all about? And in my fantasy party, I will step forward proudly and I will say, I can tell you what that is all about. But then before I even get a chance, a friend of mine from college will come up and say, hey, Dan, you're still in touch with Adam Rifkin, right? Charlie Sheen called my house looking for Adam Rifkin. Thank you very much.